Hello and welcome to SBN News. I'm Kendra Bowers, the Head of Community.
And I'm Scott Douglas, the Head of Marketing here at SBN.
Before I pass over to Scott, my co-host, to give you the lowdown on what's been happening and what's coming up, those of you who know me know that I'm a big advocate for building industry links with universities. Some of you will have seen my interview with Gail Bogue, Dean of Edinburgh Napier University, discussing the advantages of building these relationships with both businesses and future professionals. But many businesses I speak to still are unaware of the ways that they can collaborate with universities and their students. Therefore, I'd like to highlight that one of our member organisations, Edinburgh Napier, are open for submissions for their LIVE project. The LIVE project, for those of you who don't know, is a real-world based project carried out on a consultancy basis by a small student team studying marketing, hospitality, tourism, and festival and events management. There is no charge for the research that's carried out by the student group, and they'll present their findings back to you in April 2021. The project outline could be, for example, recommendations on a social media strategy to a visitor attraction, or the most cost-effective way to market an event or a project, like the one that Russell submitted, for example, to my student group back in 2013, which was to get our Scottish float into the Rio Carnival in Brazil, which was actually impossible. But we came back with recommendations to achieve the same results. Anyway, we will leave details below of where to find further details, and I'd be delighted to connect you with the module leader at Edinburgh Napier. They are currently low on event-related projects and also airport and aviation-related projects. So, Scott, over to you after that intro.
Thanks very much, Kendra. I can't believe that was 2013. Does that mean
I had to come back there. I was like, oh,
does that mean that we've known each other for almost 7 years? Because that seems way too long.
I know.
We're going to take a quick look back at some of the news and events that's happened across the membership this past week. We launched the SBN Christmas Hamper. It's an online resource which is full of unique Scottish gifts, festive events, charitable fundraising, as well as our very own Advent calendar and an SBN Christmas playlist on Spotify. You'll be able to see all the full details for that on the SBN Hamper website, which we'll include in the details of this video. We've also had some more members in the news. Congratulations are in order for George Mackay. He was confirmed as the Chief Executive of the Inverclyde Chamber of Commerce, so we'll hopefully get George on to hear more about that soon. We also featured in the news this week as our new ambassador in Bangalore was announced, Tom Thomas. We'll hopefully have him on in early next year, and he'll be helping out Scottish businesses with the relations in India as well. There were also events abound in the past week. Alan Burse and the Second Wave Collective hosted an event about preparing your workplace for COVID-secure openings in the coming months, especially as we move from tier to tier across the UK. The University of the Highlands and Islands sat down with Senator Gordon H. Smith for their Leadership Perspective series on Wednesday night, which was really insightful. And the STV Growth Academy returned. Our chairman Russell was joined by Gordon White of FatBuzz and Sandy Kennedy of Entrepreneurial Scotland to talk about how to expand your network and connect with customers online. Some exciting things are coming up too. Our friends at the Africa Scotland Business Network are hosting an event discussing how to market in a continent as diverse and massive as Africa. You can hear from them and join on the discussion on December 17th. Fraser Morrison in Singapore is starting his LinkedIn for Leaders course on the 14th. There's still a handful of spaces available, I believe. Bespoke Atelier have opened up their Glasgow studio for some weekend tours. If you're in the Glasgow area, you'll be able to book in there via Eventbrite, and it's a great opportunity to shop local this Christmas and see some of their stunning designs. There's also still time to support the MBN Food Bank appeal. They're supporting local Glasgow food banks to help people put food on their tables for them and their families this Christmas. You can also help give back with Exec Space as their charity Christmas toy and gift collection still going. You can get in touch with them and the details that you'll find below this video, as well as donating things into their offices in Edinburgh. We've also announced some of our events for early 2021. We'll be doing a couple of events on the 19th of January. So to find out more about that, visit the SBN members portal. And finally, SBN will be hosting our very own festive event next week to say thank you to all the members who have supported us through what has been quite a tough year. But that's what's coming up. Today we've got some other exciting guests, don't we, Kendra?
Yes, we're welcoming Ruby Sweeney, founder and director of the Events Hub. Hello, Ruby.
Hi, Kendra. How are you doing?
Hello, I was just going to ask you firstly to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about the Events Hub.
Yeah, so I am the founder of the Events Hub, and we run our events in the virtual and hybrid space. So taking the experience that we've gained over the last decade or so of running events in a live space, we have now moved into the virtual space to deliver events in this new world that we find ourselves in. So
you've mentioned that you run virtual, hybrid and face-to-face events around the world, and you've supported businesses as they've adapted to the virtual event space. I imagine businesses are now coming to you for your expertise as they shape their 2021 event strategy. And we've mentioned hybrid events there. Do you think that that'll be a key for delivering in the future? Or how can Events Hub support with businesses as they adopt these new approaches?
Absolutely, Kendra. I think that hybrid is going to be our strategy in the long term. So what we're looking at is that opportunity of running an event in the virtual space as well as a live event. And what's really interesting is how creative organizations are getting with running both elements, or at least planning both elements as they move into the new year and beyond. So what that could look like is having just a physical studio setup, which is sort of partially hybrid, or you look at having local events and then that's streamed into a much bigger virtual event. And there are lots of different kind of nuances that make an event either fully or partially hybrid. And the key to that is that businesses and organizations are offering their attendees, their participants or their staff, if it's an internal conference, the opportunity to choose how they want to come into an event. And I think that's really key this year, is that we have had to just take the leap and go into the virtual space, as we were saying earlier. But going forward, businesses and organizations have got the opportunity to plan for the hybrid and virtual space. So that's really, really interesting, because it allows us to kind of design our events for the virtual experience or the hybrid experience. And the other big key is that some people are in different camps, everyone's in different camps, and people want to either attend an event physically or they want to attend an event virtually, and they want to have that choice to be able to pick and choose that international conference or that local event or that AGM. I want to choose how I go into that event and how I participate. And so as organizers and hosts and creators of these events, we need to be able to give people the choice as to how they come into our events and how they interact with them. So what we're doing at the Events Hub is we're helping our clients plan for that hybrid experience. So one thing that I'm doing with the client at the moment is looking at 3 different scenarios of his event, which is a few months away. So what we're doing is we're looking at a partially hybrid solution, a fully hybrid solution, and on the other hand, a fully virtual event. So working with the clients to say, what's the best scenario for this, for these options or these restrictions potentially for you, and then translating those into the virtual platform or the delegate or the participant experience. And that planning is so key, because that's really where you can anticipate your resources, your costs, the timescales, and really be able to kind of start to move forward into this new way of attending and running events. So for us, that's really important, is that planning, and that communication piece just has to keep happening between all the stakeholders. So whether that's a venue, if you're holding space at a venue to potentially do a hybrid event, or if it's your technical production team, or if it's the client, or if it's speakers or stakeholders, it's that communication piece which is really key.
Amazing. So you and me, and I'm sure members of our audience, still place that emphasis on the value of the face-to-face element of an event. And I know that part of this will be reintroduced when it's right to do so, and we'll have that hybrid approach, as you've mentioned. But we can't ignore the benefits that we've seen during this shift to a digital event space. What are some of the key benefits that you've seen, Ruby?
Yeah, so key benefits that I have seen is firstly in numbers and reach, because a lot of our clients who run, whether they're UK-wide, Scotland-wide or worldwide events, have seen the numbers grow massively. So again, for a conference where we might have a capacity in the room of 150 people, when it's a live conference, we've been able to double those numbers to 300, 450, because with a platform, you don't have an upper limit necessarily, because the most platforms can take limitless numbers of attendees. And so in that respect, the numbers and kind of that reach, countrywide or worldwide, has been massive. So we've seen clients who've had conferences attended across time zones, across continents. And last week, I helped a client run an event in Scotland, but they still had people attending from 12 different countries. So people have a vested interest in either a topic area or whatever's being discussed, or they have some sort of connection to the event, which is why they're there. And so whether they're in that country or in that city or outside of is irrelevant now. And the access piece is huge. So I think that's a really big key, definitely.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. As I say, with SBN, it's just given us this new opportunity to engage with our international members and our international audience. It's just been fantastic that it's kind of pushed us in that way. And I kind of think, why weren't we doing this before? Because like you say, you're involving new time zones in the events, and you're hearing all these new voices and connecting with everybody across the globe. Like, it's amazing when you see the stats come back and you think, oh, we've had over like 30 countries involved there essentially. It is incredible in that way. So
Yeah.
do you have any online tips to share with our audience if they're looking at the 2020 event strategy at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that for anyone who's planning an event going forward, is to recognize that you're planning an event for the virtual or the hybrid experience in that space. So whereas up until this year, we might have just taken an event and just put it into a platform like Zoom or Teams or something else, we have now got that opportunity to design a specific event for the virtual experience, because we've all had to learn this year. And we've all learned by attending events, by running events, by sponsoring, by hosting, whatever that looks like. And so being able to take something and designing it for virtual, so shorter, snappier sessions, making sure there's interactions in platforms, giving people the opportunity to network or go into breakout rooms and have discussions. And on the other side, giving sponsors and speakers the opportunity to really maximize their involvement in an event. And again, from an organizer perspective, is being able to also monetize those things in a way that makes sense and adds value for everyone, whether that's ticket fees or whether that's sponsorship or whether it's something else. What the digital and virtual platforms are offering is that opportunity to give people the metrics post-event to say, this number of people interacted with this event from these countries, they were on for this length of time, they interacted with X, Y, and Z in the platform. And those kind of metrics and that intelligence is difficult to find unless you do a survey, but it can be skewed in a live event. But actually in a virtual event, the stats are there, the metrics are there because the interactions are measured by delegate. So there's some really cool kind of interactions that you can measure and monitor and analyze. And I think the opportunities that a virtual event gives us is that a marketing campaign can be a lot longer than just a one-day event or show or conference or whatever. Is that campaign is much bigger in the sense that you've got the start of the event, the during, and then the post, which can be quite a long sort of time, in the sense that you can really market, remarket, reuse content, share nuggets, create webinars off the back of it. So there's a really there's an extension, I think, of that campaign, and the effectiveness of that is also amplified, which is really quite clever, and really special. And I think that gives us loads of opportunity to really think about our events. And I think another thing I would add is that we might have up until spring of this year just run events for the sake of running them, or we've always run this event, or we've always had this meeting once a month or whatever. But actually It's really being able to analyze why we run an event and what value we're bringing is another thing to think about when we're planning. So whether you're running one event in a year or 30, look at every single event and look at the kind of the strategy behind that event, but also the kind of strategy overall, what brings all of your events together, and then also how you segment those events and what they're achieving for you and what outcomes you expect, and then also then how you measure them and how that fits into the objectives of the organization or the business.
Incredible advice there for those joining us. And I think you're right, those insights that you can gather in the metrics just help you shape your future marketing campaigns and your future events. And still with Scottish International Week, which we ran in September, we're still getting people visiting to replay the content. So it is that kind of post-event exercise, and we're still engaging with new people off the back of that, which we wouldn't have done if we had held it physically in Scotland like in previous years. So yes, it's incredible. And I just want to thank you, Ruby. I really do. Thanks for catching up with us today. And I encourage anybody who's out there that is reviewing their 2021 event strategy to speak to Ruby. She really has got the expertise, and we have had many conversations on key platforms to look at as well for your events. So thanks again, Ruby. We'll see you again in 2021. That's not our only guest today, is it, Scott?
No, I'd like everybody to welcome Dougie Arbuckle.
Hello there, folks.
Hi there, Dougie.
Nice to see you again. How are you doing?
Yeah, good to see you. How are you?
Overexposed by the looks of it. I'm not usually radioactive when in real life.
That's just what happens when it starts getting dark at 10 a.m. in Scotland now, so we can't really avoid it. So thanks for joining us today. And before we start, I just wondered if you could introduce yourself.
Yep, so my name's Dougie Arbuckle. I'm advisor to GreenOre Gold. And I've been with the Scottish Business Network with the company probably for a couple of months now, since I was introduced to Russell and Scott and Kendra yourself. Yeah, we've made plenty of friends already, and we've enjoyed trying to get our story out there, and really to let people know about the exciting possibilities for gold and critical metals in Scotland.
Yeah, I'm glad you're making friends. That's what we love to hear. Speaking of gold in Scotland, how do you go about finding it in gold in a place such as Scotland?
Well, it's a combination of things. I suppose my own journey began with looking at kind of ancient medieval literature, which is where my interests were initially. Kind of, I suppose for want of a better word, the kind of myths and fables, insofar as history that far back is reliable. And then it begins with kind of piecing together clues. Now the geologists will obviously be working on much harder data than that, but they will include that kind of stuff, as long as as well as research on place names and map work, all that kind of thing. But institutions like the British Geological Survey are a great resource for reports that they've published before about economic viability of certain metals and geology that we have in Scotland. And also academic institutions, for instance, the University of Aberdeen is a world-renowned geological department, and they have extensive reports both on the geology and archaeology associated with certain areas of Scotland that are and are still proving to be highly prospective for gold. I've just turned my mirror back on. I knew something was amiss. So it's a combination of those kind of things. And really, I suppose it's putting together a puzzle until you're able to commit resources into actually further physical exploration. Things like core sampling, soil sampling, panning streams to see if there's any alluvial gold, and these elements start to form a bigger picture until the point where you can confidently say, okay, this is the grade of gold that we have in a particular area. This is the trend that it runs along, and this is the kind of geological story behind it. Because gold occurs in different formations and in different qualities and quantities and grades. Scottish gold typically is very high in purity. which is a bonus and a real selling point for our resources. And I suppose the interesting thing for me as well, and I'm by no means know it all. I don't think anybody does, so I'm learning all the time, is that you start to find other elements that are in or around the gold. So things like copper that Scotland is not traditionally known for, zinc, platinum group elements, nickel, and a lot of these are important to industries that we want to attract to Scotland. There's the space tech industry, there's renewable batteries, medical, dentistry, instruments. I mean, there's even new products that are being invented all the time. There's an alternative to liposuction that's being trialed in America at the moment that uses subparticles of gold to eat fat. So things are happening all the time in terms of new technology, but one of the benefits of gold is as a conductor. Now, it's not as conductive as copper or silver, but it has the benefit of being a lot more durable, and also it tarnishes less, so it's also in high demand for that. And for things like coating of space shuttles, astronauts' visors. I think there's 41 kilograms of gold on the Columbia Space Shuttle. So yeah, its uses are very varied. Typically, there's about 50% of the market is for jewellery, about 40% is investment, so investment in things like bullion, and 10% in these kind of mission-critical technology metals for gold. So yeah, it's a really interesting story, and finding out where the gold deposits is just the kind of beginning of it. And then we're kind of having to scope out and see what the uses are and where the demand is.
Yeah. So you mentioned a lot of geology and geologists going into this, but you also mentioned maps. Can you tell us a little bit about how looking at old maps helps you find gold? It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, yeah, and I suppose a good example, and I'll come out of Scotland for a moment. The first time I actually met Gavin Birkenhager as the MD and the chief geologist of the company was had a lovely barbecue at his place in Muir of Ord, one of my favourite parts of the world. And him and I both have a fondness for Germany. I lived there for a large extent of my life, and Gavin's father's German. And on the way out, he chucked me this book, and it was Gold and Platinum Vorkommen in Deutschland. And he said, "Here, read that. Your German's better than mine." And I said, "I'm not sure about whether my technical German can cope with all of this scientific data." Amazingly, I was flicking through it and just kind of stopped. Something caught my eye, and it was actually an area called the Bergstraße, which is I used to live there a few years ago. Lovely 15th century town. And there was 2 solid pages of street names, just from the surrounding hamlets and villages around where I lived. And there were things like In de Goldbrunne, Goldquelle, so Goldweg, so Gold Source, Gold Way, Gold River. And these are names that date back to 13th, 14th century. And when you looked at the map of abandoned mines within probably about a 40-kilometre radius of that place, there was about over 100 abandoned iron ore mines or smelters or smiths, and gold often occurs in these kind of heavier elements, and you can apply the same kind of logic as we did to Aberdeenshire. So near our Aberdeenshire deposit, and you have to look really hard on these OS maps. It's tiny little geographical features, not even places, like Thief's Crag or Smuggler's Well, Silverburn, all these kind of names are clues that you start to add to the story. So I really enjoy that part of it, the chase, so to speak. But yeah, Gavin was way ahead, way down the line with me on that. He started a lot earlier, and he has the drilling results to back it up.
So you also talked about all the different surrounding metals that come with gold and their uses. So with that in mind and your mapping abilities, what does 2021 have in store for GreenOre Gold?
Well, we're really excited to be working with an Edinburgh company that has been using a new form of scanning device. It has been trialled in other industries, and I think Gavin will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was originally intended for the space industry. But we've trialled it on our Gairloch site, and we were able to, without drilling, we were able to do a deep penetration at depth and find out that the ore deposit that we know is there is actually of a far greater extent. So the use of that kind of technology, which is groundbreaking and unique in the industry, is fantastic for us in terms of costs, because it'll potentially reduce costs in exploration by about 9/10. And also environmentally, because we don't actually physically have to dig every time, the data is telling us that it's a good place to look. So certainly working with them, we're going to move that down to our ayrshire deposit, hopefully in the new year, and we're really excited about that being a big copper porphyry resource. And we're looking for partners. We've got a trade mission planned to Ontario, hopefully in the new year. Hopefully doing some more stuff with SBN stateside.
Yeah.
And we've recently been working in partnership with the British Embassy in Beijing to look for investors in Asia. I suppose we're quite a niche project in one sense, because people don't really associate this kind of mining industry with Scotland. But the fact is, we were at it, way before a lot of traditional countries, and before, I suppose, as it was known then, that the New World came into play as a resource of gold for us. So, making friendships, making connections, and really kind of getting our profile raised and meeting as many people as possible, so we can take it to the next stage, which is hopefully opening Gairloch as a going concern quite soon.
Brilliant. Well, on that note, I just want to thank you very much for joining us, and we'll hopefully have you back on in 2021 to see how the journey is going.
Yeah, I'd love to keep you updated, and thanks for all your support, everybody at SBN. It's been a really fantastic reception so far. I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to meet people, so thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, goodbye.
Another great show. Thank you to Ruby and Dougie for joining us this week. Scott, what else do we need to tell our audience to look out for?
So as we mentioned, we've announced our first dates for 2021, which is the 19th of January. You can find the details for that on the members portal. And just to all the SBN members out there, keep an eye out, because you'll be hearing further details about our Christmas celebrations next week. But until then, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.